Hello, and welcome back to the Narrative Reading Bible podcast. My name is Jessica. Today, we conclude our reading of the book of Numbers with pages 254 to 263 of the Narrative Reading Bible, Book 1, Paths to Promise. The reading is from the Berean Standard Bible translation. Enjoy today's reading.
Then Moses said to the heads of the tribes of Israel, "This is what the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word. He must do everything he has promised. And if a woman in her father's house during her youth makes a vow to the Lord, or obligates herself by a pledge, and her father hears about her vow or pledge but says nothing to her, then all the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father prohibits her on the day he hears about it, then none of the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. The Lord will absolve her because her father has prohibited her. If a woman marries while under a vow or rash promise by which she has bound herself, and her husband hears of it, but says nothing to her on that day, then the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her husband prohibits her when he hears of it, he nullifies the vow that binds her or the rash promise she has made, and the Lord will absolve her. Every vow a widow or divorced woman pledges to fulfill is binding on her. If a woman in her husband's house has made a vow or put herself under an obligation with an oath, and her husband hears of it but says nothing to her and does not prohibit her, then all the vows or pledges by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her husband nullifies them on the day he hears of them, then nothing that came from her lips, whether her vows or pledges, shall stand. Her husband has nullified them, and the Lord will absolve her. Her husband may confirm or nullify any vow or any sworn pledge to deny herself. But if her husband says nothing to her from day to day, then he confirms all the vows and pledges that bind her. He has confirmed them, because he said nothing to her on the day he heard about them. But if he nullifies them after he hears of them, then he will bear her iniquity. These are the statutes that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the relationship between a man and his wife, and between a father and a young daughter still in his home. And the Lord said to Moses, "Take vengeance on the Midianites for the Israelites. After that, you will be gathered to your people." So Moses told the people, "Arm some of your men for war, that they may go against the Midianites and execute the Lord's vengeance on them. Send into battle 1,000 men from each tribe of Israel." So 1,000 men were recruited from each tribe of Israel, 12,000 armed for war. And Moses sent the 1,000 from each tribe into battle, along with Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, who took with him the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for signaling. Then they waged war against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and they killed every male. Among the slain were Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. They also killed Balaam son of Beor with the sword. The Israelites captured the Midianite women and their children, and they plundered all their herds, flocks, and goods. Then they burned all the cities where the Midianites had lived, as well as all their encampments, and carried away all the plunder and spoils, both people and animals. They brought the captives, spoils, and plunder to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of Israel at the camp on the plains of Moab, by the Jordan across from Jericho. And Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, who were returning from the battle. "Have you spared all the women?" he asked them. "Look, these women caused the sons of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to turn unfaithfully against the Lord at Peor, so that the plague struck the congregation of the Lord. So now, kill all the boys, as well as every woman who has had relations with a man. But spare for yourselves every girl who has never had relations with a man. All of you who have killed a person or touched the dead are to remain outside the camp for 7 days. On the 3rd day and the 7th day, you are to purify both yourselves and your captives, and purify every garment and leather good, everything made of goat's hair, and every article of wood. Then Eleazar the priest said to the soldiers who had gone into battle, "This is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded Moses. Only the gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand the fire, must be put through the fire, and it will be clean. But it must still be purified with the water of purification, and everything that cannot withstand the fire must pass through the water. On the 7th day, you are to wash your clothes, and you will be clean. After that, you may enter the camp." The Lord said to Moses, "You and Eleazar the priest and the family heads of the congregation are to take account of what was captured, both of man and beast. Then divide the captives between the troops who went out to battle and the rest of the congregation. Set aside a tribute for the Lord from what belongs to the soldiers who went into battle, 1 out of every 500, whether persons, cattle, donkeys, or sheep. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. From the Israelites' half, take 1 out of every 50, whether persons, cattle, donkeys, sheep, or other animals, and give them to the Levites who keep charge of the tabernacle of the Lord." So Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord had commanded Moses, and this plunder remained from the spoils the soldiers had taken: 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 women who had not slept with a man. This was the half portion for those who had gone to war: 337,500 sheep, including a tribute to the Lord of 36,000 cattle, including a tribute to the Lord of 30,500 donkeys, including a tribute to the Lord of 61 and 16,000 people, including a tribute to the Lord of 32. Moses gave the tribute to Eleazar the priest as an offering for the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. From the Israelites' half, which Moses had set apart from the men who had gone to war, this half belonged to the congregation: 337,500 sheep, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people. From the Israelites' half, Moses took 1 out of every 50 persons and animals and gave them to the Levites, who kept charge of the tabernacle of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded him. Then the officers who were over the units of the army, the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, approached Moses and said, "Your servants have counted the soldiers under our command, and not one of us is missing. So we have brought to the Lord an offering of the gold articles each man acquired: armlets, bracelets, rings, earrings, and necklaces, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord." So Moses and Eleazar the priest received from them all the articles made out of gold, all the gold that the commanders of thousands and of hundreds presented as an offering to the Lord weighed 16,750 shekels. Each of the soldiers had taken plunder for himself, and Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and brought it into the tent of meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. Now the Reubenites and Gadites, who had very large herds and flocks, surveyed the lands of Jazer and Gilead, and they saw that the region was suitable for livestock. So the Gadites and Reubenites came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the leaders of the congregation, and said, "Ataroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elealeh, Sebam, Nebo, and Beon, which the Lord conquered before the congregation of Israel, are suitable for livestock, and your servants have livestock. If we have found favor in your sight," they said, "let this land be given to your servants as a possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan." But Moses asked the Gadites and Reubenites, "Shall your brothers go to war while you sit here? Why are you discouraging the Israelites from crossing into the land that the Lord has given them? This is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh, Barnea, to inspect the land. For when your fathers went up to the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the Israelites from entering the land that the Lord had given them. So the anger of the Lord was kindled that day, and he swore an oath, saying, because they did not follow me wholeheartedly, not one of the men 20 years of age or older who came out of Egypt will see the land that I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not one except Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, and Joshua son of Nun, because they did follow the Lord wholeheartedly. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until the whole generation who had done evil in his sight was gone. Now behold, you, a brood of sinners, have risen up in place of your fathers, to further stoke the burning anger of the Lord against Israel. For if you turn away from following him, he will once again leave this people in the wilderness, and you will be the cause of their destruction. Then the Gadites and Reubenites approached Moses and said, we want to build sheepfolds here for our livestock and cities for our little ones. But we will arm ourselves and be ready to go ahead of the Israelites until we have brought them into their place. Meanwhile, our little ones will remain in the fortified cities for protection from the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until every Israelite has taken possession of his inheritance. Yet we will not have an inheritance with them across the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance has come to us on the east side of the Jordan. Moses replied, if you will do this, if you will arm yourselves before the Lord for battle, and if every one of your armed men crosses the Jordan before the Lord, until he has driven his enemies out before him, then when the land is subdued before the Lord, you may return and be free of obligation to the Lord and to Israel. And this land will belong to you as a possession before the Lord. But if you do not do this, you will certainly sin against the Lord, and be assured that your sin will find you out. Build cities for your little ones, and folds for your flocks, but do what you have promised. The Gadites and Reubenites said to Moses, your servants will do just as our Lord commands. Our children, our wives, our livestock, and all our animals will remain here in the cities of Gilead. But your servants are equipped for war, and every man will cross over to the battle before the Lord, just as our Lord says. So Moses gave orders about them to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua son of Nun, and to the family leaders of the tribes of Israel. And Moses said to them, if the Gadites and Reubenites cross the Jordan with you, with every man armed for battle before the Lord, and the land is subdued before you, then you are to give them the land of Gilead as a possession. But if they do not arm themselves and go across with you, then they must accept their possession among you in the land of Canaan. The Gadites and Reubenites replied, as the Lord has spoken to your servants, so we will do. We will cross over into the land of Canaan armed before the Lord, that we may have our inheritance on this side of the Jordan. So Moses gave to the Gadites, to the Reubenites, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land including its cities, and the territory surrounding them. And the Gadites built up Dibon, Ataroth, Aroer, Atroth-Shophan, Jazer, Jogbehah, Beth-Nimrah, and Beth-Haran as fortified cities, and they built folds for their flocks. The Reubenites built up Heshbon, Elealeh, Kiriathaim, as well as Nebo and Baal-Meon, whose names were changed, and Sibmah, and they renamed the cities they rebuilt. The descendants of Mashir son of Manasseh went to Gilead, captured it, and drove out the Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to the clan of Mashir son of Manasseh, and they settled there. Jair, a descendant of Manasseh, went and captured their villages, and called them Havoth Jair. And Nobah went and captured Kenath and its villages, and called it Nobah, after his own name. These are the journeys of the Israelites when they came out of the land of Egypt, by their divisions, under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. At the Lord's command, Moses recorded the stages of their journey. These are the stages listed by their starting points. On the 15th day of the first month, on the day after the Passover, the Israelites set out from Ramesses. They marched out defiantly in full view of all the Egyptians, who were burying all their firstborn, whom the Lord had struck down among them, for the Lord had executed judgment against their gods. The Israelites set out from Ramesses and camped at Succoth. They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham, on the edge of the wilderness. They set out from Etham and turned back to Pihahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon, and they camped near Migdol. They set out from Pihahiroth and crossed through the sea into the wilderness, and they journeyed 3 days into the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. They set out from Marah and came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. They set out from Elim and camped by the Red Sea. They set out from the Red Sea and camped in the desert of Sin. They set out from the desert of Sin and camped at Dophkah. They set out from Dophkah and camped at Alush. They set out from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They set out from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. They set out from Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They set out from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They set out from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. They set out from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They set out from Libnah and camped at Rissah. They set out from Rissah and camped at Kehelatha. They set out from Kehelatha and camped at Mount Shepher. They set out from Mount Shepher and camped at Harada. They set out from Harada and camped at Makaloth. They set out from Makaloth and camped at Tahath. They set out from Tahath and camped at Terah. They set out from Terah and camped at Mithkah. They set out from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. They set out from Hashmonah and camped at Moseroth. They set out from Moseroth and camped at Bene-Jaakan. They set out from Bene-Jaakan and camped at Hor-Haggidgad. They set out from Hor-Haggidgad and camped at Jotbatha. They set out from Jotbatha and camped at Abrona. They set out from Abrona and camped at Ezion-Geber. They set out from Ezion-Geber and camped at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. They set out from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor on the outskirts of the land of Edom. At the Lord's command, Aaron the priest climbed Mount Hor and died there on the first day of the 5th month, in the 40th year after the Israelites had come out of the land of Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. Now the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, heard that the Israelites were coming. And the Israelites set out from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmonah. They set out from Zalmonah and camped at Punon. They set out from Punon and camped at Oboth. They set out from Oboth and camped at Iye-Abarim, on the border of Moab. They set out from Iyim and camped at Dibon-Gad. They set out from Dibon-Gad and camped at Almon-Diblathaim. They set out from Almon-Diblathaim and camped in the mountains of Abarim, facing Nebo. They set out from the mountains of Abarim and camped on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. And there on the plains of Moab they camped by the Jordan, from Beth-Jeshimoth to Abel-Shittim. On the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you must drive out before you all the inhabitants of the land, destroy all their carved images and cast idols, and demolish all their high places. You are to take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given you the land to possess, and you are to divide the land by lot, according to your clans. Give a larger inheritance to a larger clan, and a smaller inheritance to a smaller one. Whatever falls to each one, by lot, will be his. You will receive an inheritance according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those you allow to remain will become barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you settle. And then I will do to you what I had planned to do to them." Then the Lord said to Moses, Command the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, it will be allotted to you as an inheritance with these boundaries. Your southern border will extend from the wilderness of Zin along the border of Edom. On the east, your southern border will run from the end of the Salt Sea, cross south of the ascent of Akrabim, continue to Zin, and go south of Kadesh Barnea. Then it will go on to Hazar Adar and proceed to Asmon, where it will turn from Asmon, join the brook of Egypt, and end at the sea. Your western border will be the coastline of the Great Sea. This will be your boundary on the west. Your northern border will run from the Great Sea directly to Mount Hor, and from Mount Hor to Lebo-Hamath, then extend to Zedad, continue to Ziphron, and end at Hazar-Enan. This will be your boundary on the north. And your eastern border will run straight from Hazar-Enan to Shechem, then go down from Shechem to Riblah on the east side of Ain, and continue along the slopes east of the Sea of Chinnereth. Then the border will go down along the Jordan and end at the Salt Sea. This will be your land, defined by its borders on all sides. So Moses commanded the Israelites, apportion this land by lot as an inheritance. The Lord has commanded that it be given to the 9.5 tribes. For the tribes of the Reubenites and Gadites, along with the half-tribe of Manasseh, have already received their inheritance. These 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance across the Jordan from Jericho toward the sunrise. Then the Lord said to Moses, these are the names of the men who are to assign the land as an inheritance for you: Eleazar the priest, and Joshua son of Nun. Appoint one leader from each tribe to distribute the land. These are their names: Caleb, son of Jephunneh, from the tribe of Judah; Shemuel, son of Ammihud, from the tribe of Simeon; Eladad, son of Chislon, from the tribe of Benjamin; Buki, son of Jogli, a leader from the tribe of Dan; Haniel, son of Ephod, a leader from the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph; Kemuel, son of Shiptan, a leader from the tribe of Ephraim; Elizaphan, son of Parnak, a leader from the tribe of Zebulun; Paltiel, son of Azan, a leader from the tribe of Issachar; Ahihud, son of Shalomi, a leader from the tribe of Asher; and Pedahel, son of Ammihud, a leader from the tribe of Naphtali. These are the ones whom the Lord commanded to apportion the inheritance to the Israelites in the land of Canaan. Again the Lord spoke to Moses on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Command the Israelites to give, from the inheritance they will possess, cities for the Levites to live in, and pasture lands around the cities. The cities will be for them to live in, and the pasture lands will be for their herds, their flocks, and all their other livestock. The pasture lands around the cities you are to give the Levites will extend 1,000 cubits from the wall on every side. You are also to measure 2,000 cubits outside the city on the east, 2,000 on the south, 2,000 on the west, and 2,000 on the north, with the city in the center. These areas will serve as larger pasture lands for the cities. 6 of the cities you give the Levites are to be appointed as cities of refuge, to which a manslayer may flee. In addition to these, give the Levites 42 other cities. The total number of cities you give the Levites will be 48, with their corresponding pasture lands. The cities that you apportion from the territory of the Israelites should be given to the Levites in proportion to the inheritance of each tribe, more from a larger tribe and less from a smaller one. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, designate cities to serve as your cities of refuge, so that a person who kills someone unintentionally may flee there. You are to have these cities as a refuge from the avenger, so that the manslayer will not die until he stands trial before the assembly. The cities you select will be your 6 cities of refuge. Select 3 cities across the Jordan, and 3 in the land of Canaan as cities of refuge. These 6 cities will serve as a refuge for the Israelites. and for the foreigner or stranger among them, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. If, however, anyone strikes a person with an iron object and kills him, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. Or if anyone has in his hand a stone of deadly size, and he strikes and kills another, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. If anyone has in his hand a deadly object of wood, and he strikes and kills another, he is a murderer. The murderer must surely be put to death. The avenger of blood is to put the murderer to death. When he finds him, he is to kill him. Likewise, if anyone maliciously pushes another, or intentionally throws an object at him and kills him, or if in hostility he strikes him with his hand and he dies, the one who struck him must surely be put to death. He is a murderer. When the avenger of blood finds the murderer, he is to kill him. But if anyone pushes a person suddenly, without hostility, or throws an object at him unintentionally, or without looking drops a heavy stone that kills him, but he was not an enemy and did not intend to harm him, then the congregation must judge between the slayer and the avenger of blood according to these ordinances. The assembly is to protect the manslayer from the hand of the avenger of blood. Then the assembly will return him to the city of refuge to which he fled, and he must live there until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the holy oil. But if the manslayer ever goes outside the limits of the city of refuge to which he fled, and the avenger of blood finds him outside of his city of refuge and kills him, then the avenger will not be guilty of bloodshed, because the manslayer must remain in his city of refuge until the death of the high priest. Only after the death of the high priest may he return to the land he owns. This will be a statutory ordinance for you for the generations to come, wherever you live. If anyone kills a person, the murderer is to be put to death on the testimony of the witnesses. But no one is to be put to death based on the testimony of a lone witness. You are not to accept a ransom for the life of a murderer who deserves to die. He must surely be put to death. Nor should you accept a ransom for the person who flees to a city of refuge and allow him to return and live on his own land before the death of the high priest. Do not pollute the land where you live, for bloodshed pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land on which the blood is shed, except by the blood of the one who shed it. Do not defile the land where you live and where I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell among the Israelites. Now the family heads of the clan of Gilead, son of Mashir, son of Manasseh, one of the clans of Joseph, approached Moses and the leaders who were the heads of the Israelite families, and addressed them, saying, When the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land as an inheritance to the Israelites by lot, he also commanded him to give the inheritance of our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. But if they marry any of the men from the other tribes of Israel, their inheritance will be withdrawn from the portion of our fathers and added to the tribe into which they marry. So our allotted inheritance would be taken away, and when the Jubilee for the Israelites comes, their inheritance will be added to the tribe into which they marry, and taken away from the tribe of our fathers. So at the word of the Lord, Moses commanded the Israelites, The tribe of the sons of Joseph speaks correctly. This is what the Lord has commanded concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. They may marry anyone they please, provided they marry within a clan of the tribe of their father. No inheritance in Israel may be transferred from tribe to tribe, because each of the Israelites is to retain the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. Every daughter who possesses an inheritance from any Israelite tribe must marry within a clan of the tribe of her father, so that every Israelite will possess the inheritance of his fathers. No inheritance may be transferred from one tribe to another, for each tribe of Israel must retain its inheritance. So the daughters of Zelophehad did as the Lord had commanded Moses. Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, were married to cousins on their father's side. They married within the clans of the descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained within the tribe of their father's clan. These are the commandments and ordinances that the Lord gave the Israelites through Moses on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho.
Thank you for joining us as we read through the book of Numbers. Tomorrow, we will begin our reading of the book of Deuteronomy with pages 264 to 274. Until then, take care and God bless.